Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And sure happy that you've joined us for another week. So glad that you are here, letting us into your ears and for a couple of you, your eyes. That's right. We do have a video version of the podcast. I always say it at the end, but maybe you don't get all the way to the end.
It would explain a lot.
Yeah, so we do have a video version. If you go to YouTube and go to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on YouTube, you can watch us talk about this stuff. And sometimes I do fun things with the video. Today, Ryan and I have decided to try something daunting, to try something. We are going to push ourselves. We are going to there may be blood, I'm sure there'll be sweat, there may be tears,
it's possible,
and we are gonna so we get a lot of we do get, we always talk about how we want people to write us and ask us questions and stuff like that. We do get and have gotten over the last years, we've gotten people giving us awesome ideas for shows, some
of which we've even have come to fruition, which is nice.
Yeah. And that's been great.
But a couple of the best ideas, for various reasons, have not, and we've always sort of kept them in our back pocket. And today we're just going to try and sort of do them. We'll kind of talk about the topic itself, but then just kind of try and do it, sort of, which we think, hey, half and executed, not half-assed. We're going to give it our best effort, but a half-executed awesome idea is better than just leaving it behind to flounder. We have a show about this, the Shows That Never Were. You can go back and listen to it. It's pretty funny. Joel brought out really brought the funny in that episode, in my opinion.
Literally, I went through every
abandoned idea that we ever had,
an email and Facebook message thread that Ryan and I have, and all of the bonkers. Best Topol belly laugh is still
top five best
Topol laugh is still one of my absolute
great late Topol. He can belly laugh with the best of them.
Yes.
So there's those in there, which were always meant as jokes when we were frustrated that we couldn't think of anything to do. And then, but there were also some really great ones that we talk about in that show, then just the whys and wherefores. But even in that show, we didn't really just give them a try. And we know that these topics are going to be lacking. The part of the reason they've been left behind, a big part of it is because they encompass such a huge chunk of moviedom.
Right.
You know what I mean? That they're just, it just like, how do you do it? How do you get top 10 out of that? How do you, you know what I mean? How do you talk about such disparate styles of things in a coherent conversation? It's a challenge, but we're going to try. And
we're going to try.
Yeah, we're going to try and talk about a little bit on each thing and take the pressure off of us. Hey, we're just sitting around talking about movies. No big deal. This just doesn't have to be definitive. It's not going to be. Matter of fact, let's make our peace with, we're not even going to trip accidentally into definitiveness. Here, we're just literally not going to go near that or even try that. And that might just be fun. And like I told Joel before we started, and if we really get rolling and we're like, hey, there's something more here, then we'll come back to these from time to time, because they're the thing that a couple of these topics are not thus, but a couple of them you really can come back to again and again and again and again and discuss things on this level.
Yeah, and it's like some of these we've gotten like the one of them a couple of these the scope is too broad, and so if we wanted to even remotely be able to have a show where we could speak on some of these things, we would have to create such small little niche subcategories to these big categories. And maybe we'll do that sometime, but I don't know.
It could work in spots, so we'll see.
So we have 5 categories here that we are going to talk about that have been on our to-do list, but just seem, man, we have skipped them. They're just too darn hard. They're just really, really difficult. And so we are calling this show Joel and Ryan Take on the Impossible. Okay. Topic number 1. Best literature adaptations. The best book to movie adaptation.
Or worst book to movie adaptations, too, is implied, I think, in that.
Yeah.
It's not always implied, but I think, what are the really, really good ones?
Yeah.
What are the really, really bad ones?
And, there are a few that I think everyone, that are on every list. And, this is a side note. This is a departure from what we normally do. We will be referring to many online lists. We're going to, help as a way for them to sort of help guide our discussion. What does everybody else think? And because there's a lot of these that everyone agrees on. To Kill a Mockingbird.
We've had some online lists on here, but not many. We really don't try and just read you clickbait lists. But I think this is a category that gets a lot of play in that context. So it is sort of worth, like you just said, what does everybody think, and then where are we in relation to that? Of course, you said it though when we were talking about doing, how we're going to talk about it. Main reason this category is hard isn't because there are 18 million, play to film adaptations or novel to film adaptations or whatever, short story to film adaptation. There are way too many to do a show on reasonably, let alone a little part of a show like we're doing. But the bigger deal is there's so many books out there that we just haven't read. Joel's a pretty big reader, although later in life he reads a lot for the same reason, like choose this movie or that movie, which is because it's like a blankie. It just you want to feel good and experience something fun that engages you in a positive way. And a lot of the best literature, frankly, doesn't do that. It shakes you up and challenges you and, twists your nerves and your emotions, and those are actually pretty easily avoided. So, and I just flat out, my eyesight has gotten weird, and I read a lot actually as a person, but I don't read a lot of literature anymore. Because it's hard. It sort of gives me headaches and stuff. I don't know why sitting there reading the news on my phone doesn't, and why sitting with a nice book does. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but for some reason, maybe it's the length of time you spend. I don't know. Anyway, so I hardly read anything, and I used to be a decent enough reader too. Although it's kind of same thing. Like I had like the way we are with movies and TV shows, especially TV shows. I have my little niche things that I turn to, and I didn't read Tolstoy and, some Dickens. I would read that, but I mean, it's like there's just some classic stuff which is like, no, thank you, I'm sorry. There are, some of my favorite book recommendations from when I was younger absolutely came from Ryan. Yeah, so I used to be pretty good at it, but.
Yeah. And that was great. And then, and then when I lived in New York, I would read on the subway. every day, and I blew through so many books. That was, and I would read all. I very rarely read nonfiction unless it's something that really really interests me. I prefer narrative fiction, and
sure.
And so I would blow through a ton of books that way. And then once once we moved back here and kind of got back into car culture here in the Twin Cities and everything, I started reading less, and reading just more became a way for me to end my day. But I still get through, I don't know, 20 books a year, 25 books a year, maybe. But it really is, I read for escapism. I read for joy. I read for,
not exclusively, right? But that is what you really sort of focus on. Yeah. And I understand that. That's, when I read about as fast as I can talk. So when I sit down with a book, I really want it to transport me somehow, and that was always my take too. Maybe not positive stuff, but something that was worth it, because it really was a labor to do it, even back when I read a lot. So because if I get going too fast, I can kind of read it and I kind of can tell you what it was about, but I lose the flavor of the thing. Is my problem. So every book is like a 649 page play to me. Yeah. That I have to perform for myself, and that's a lot. That's a lot of. I mean, that's great.
And when I play all the roles.
Well, that's what's great about reading, right? I mean, this is a movie and TV show, but it's worth saying, reading engages your mind and your imagination and your empathy in so much more of a direct way, and it involves you, the audience member or the reader, in the thing in a way that film really just says, hey, sit back, shut up, and here it is. You know what I mean? Yep. And and you can try and interact with a film the way you do with with words on a page or a book that where you're doing half the work, but it isn't the same. And the films that are tend not to be super popular with the masses because that's not what they show up for those for. Mm-hmm. And it's certainly not what we come to television for. So that's even another step down the path of this is a pastime, as much or more than it is an art. Not to say there's not art involved, or we would never talk about it, but that's how I sort of view it. Books, man, books engage you in all the really great ways. That's why that's why all the librarians are like, reading is so this and that, and reading is this, and read to your kids. And what's the other thing? I mean, just like they don't care. Like your parents don't care if you're reading, whatever, what Pet Sematary, because you're reading.
Sure, yeah. Well, yeah, that's when
because you're reading.
You say that. Yeah,
that's a weird. Yeah. I always thought that's a weird phenomenon out there in the world. I mean, maybe some parents do, but reading, like, it opens up so many different things because there's no restrictions and they can't, when they're, in the other room playing cards or doing something that like parents do. I'm not really sure even after all these years what mine were doing in the other room, but they can't hear the people screaming or whatever. That's all happening in your head. So it's just totally cool.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
It makes me think of that Friends episode where Rachel has Joey read Little Women and Joey has Rachel read The Shining. And like Rachel gets so scared of the book, she keeps it in the freezer. And Joey is,
as you would expect, it was pretty easy to protect. Is absolutely swept away and has his life changed by Little Women. It's a life-changing book. It's a good place to start. Little Women. How many times has that thing been adapted? Many, many, many times.
Right.
It makes a good movie because it's essentially a chamber drama where the even in the book obviously the first person narrative is tough. So you've got a first person. I mean, I don't want to talk down to anybody, but obviously that's when somebody's saying, "Oh, I did this, and it was the best Christmas ever because this happened," or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's a person in their voice that's a character in the thing telling you something, and they're not, as a result, they're not much privy to what's not happening that doesn't happen directly to them. So in Little Women, it's ostensibly the author, Jo March, is telling the story, and she's one of the coolest sort of first person narratives ever, and that's part of what makes it sing is her language. But the other big thing about Little Women that's so great is the interaction of all these different people, what they say to each other, how they talk to each other, and by the time you're done, philosophically how different they are from each other,
right,
and why they are connected. And anyway, for Little Women adaptations, there have been some really great ones. There's a really great one with Katharine Hepburn, obviously, and not just Katharine Hepburn, but like, can't remember who's all in that one, but I remember Kate mostly, but it's stunning. It's like 3 or 4 super mega stars deep in the cast, and it's older, black and white, it's stagey in a way that I think, but I think the magic of that version really, really sweeps you away.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's they've attempted.
Katharine Hepburn, Joan Bennett, Paul. I'm just waiting for it to load here. You take your time, computer. I don't want to rush you.
Yeah. It's not important. It's just
it's
the
a
movie
George
show with Joel and Ryan.
Yeah. Boy. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Let me go through all the ads here. Awesome.
Anyway, Little Women.
Yeah, okay. This is the downside of this of a show like this, where we're like, oh, I'm gonna try to quick pull this up. No, there's no quick pulling of anything here.
You have to be anticipatory. Although we didn't even know we'd be talking about Little Women. That's the nature of this show. But it was a good example from the Friends episode of adaptations where the good, the bad, and the ugly are all like super a part of it. There's only one adaptation of Jaws, thank God. There's only one adaptation of The Godfather. We've talked about Jaws in depth on the show. We'll talk about The Godfather someday, maybe even this fall. We'll see.
Yeah, and of course, the incredible adaptation of Tentacoli, and
let's not forget that. I don't think that was an adaptation. Actually, it was more of a rip-off, wasn't it?
Yep. There's that episode. Go back and listen to that one.
So anyway.
So I mean, so some of these, and I think you could many people agree that like the Lord of the Rings, the Peter Jackson films, pretty great adaptation. Now we're not going to talk about
that's a whole. Obviously, we're not doing a Lord of the Rings show, but that's a whole different discussion where that's a radical adaptation from page to cinema. It really is. I know it probably doesn't seem like it is because the books are so dense with world building and backstory and stuff that it's like how you can't divert much from them. It hits all the plot high points, but the movie really, really does its own thing.
Yeah,
and was a huge success, so it's considered a great adaptation. But is it? Could it be really good movies based on these books that maybe aren't the greatest adaptation of the literary source? So that's another category that it's worth looking into. Oh, and just to go back to Little Women for a second, but as good as that old like kind of movie Rob would like sort of adaptation is For My Money, and it hasn't been bettered, and they've tried many, many times. That 1994 Winona Ryder and Susan Sarandon version of Little Women, man, it's a little formal, and it really, really is loyal almost to a fault to the feel and the book. Like, it's not a very adventurous adaptation. But Thomas Newman's music and the set design and the way they create the winter in New England during the Civil War and those kids, man, just it's Kristen Dunst to Samantha Mathis is a tricky leap, but that's always a tricky part of adapting that. But
Winona Ryder, Gabriel Byrne, Trini Alvarado, Samantha Mathis, Kirsten Dunst, Claire Danes, Christian Bale, Eric Stoltz, Mary Wicks, and Susan Sarandon. I mean, that cast, that's pretty spectacular.
It's dynamite, and they're all other than Winona, who was a big star, and I guess Susan Sarandon, they're all comers at that point. None of those people have hit the big time exactly. Only poor Trini Alvarado is on her way down. All the rest of them are about to be superstars. And it's not, and yet you don't, you feel that and you don't feel that, but you do feel like you're watching something special. So I just wanted to get that in there. It's one of my favorite adaptations of all time. I watch it annually. Yeah. I just really think it nails it, and we talked about some of the more recent ones. Yeah, and why they're maybe not so good, but even there, because I do feel like that story is one where you can't just say, I'm going to say all this other stuff.
Right.
I think the film, if you just tell the story, says what it says. And I think that if you bring an agenda to it is sort of a mistake, but whatever. But hey, having another reason to do this, I mean, that's an example of one where they do it all the time, and they do it every 10 years or so, or maybe even less. Having your own reason to do it again is kind of important. I sort of get that. I think that's true of anything that gets adapted multiple times.
Yeah.
There's two versions of The Shining, but is there really, where the world really doesn't see it that way? And just to bring up the other book from the Friends episode, it's interesting. That is interesting to me.
All blank all blank and no blank makes Jack a blank blank. that's Joey trying not to spoil things.
Good job. Do you have that's a great. That was totally out of context.
Do you have and
just a reminder, we have a whole 2 episodes with 4 podcasting superstars purely on Stephen King adaptations. Go check that out if that's your bag. He's only pretty much the most popular American author of all time.
Yeah.
So have whatever your feelings are, you certainly can't deny that about the man.
Do you have you can choose to go either way with this? Do you have one that you're like a book that you loved and the movie version of it lived up to it, or do you have one where it was a book that you loved and it was just brutal and horrible and you hated it, or just do you have a favorite or least favorite?
I don't know. I mean, I tend to look at it in a sort of more nuanced way, but the one when this first came up, although I brought this up, actually, didn't I? I was like, when we got to do adaptations, if we're going to do the impossible stuff, this is the most impossible. So as silly as it is, and I think we've even talked about it on the show before. And I think America, this is one of these nice ways where America and I were at lockstep together. This was one of these films back when we were sort of wrapping up college or whatever, that was coming out on the heels of Jurassic Park, and it had a very Jurassic Park-like ad campaign. And that in '93 obviously was the biggest movie in the world. And I really do think, not so much for our generation, but a little bit, but definitely for the millennial generation who were kids when they saw that. That's a seminal event movie, and then basically when that was adapted very famously, we talk about it on the show a lot. Adapted from the Michael Crichton novel, which when you read it is, again, it's just amazing. It really does. You see a big event movie in your head when you read it. And they started adapting his other movies, and amongst those groups, there's a whole bunch of them. Sphere, which as a movie I tend to defend, but which as an adaptation does some really goofy things. Disclosure, that's a good one. Eaters of the Dead, which they turned into 13th Warrior, which you go look at the underrated, overrated films from the late 90s, the episodes that we did. How's that for specific? You'll hear a passionate defense of Why the 13th Warrior, even though, again, it's tricky as an adaptation, is really a very, very good movie, as good a one as you could hope. To have an as good, I think, as good an examination on film of the Grendel legend that I think we'll ever have. But the one that was almost most disappointing, Sphere, I really had a soft spot for, but Sphere's third act in the book is absolutely uncinematic. It's a third act of the mind. So that was always going to, despite the fact that it reads like this awesome film and came out the summer before the summer of underwater adventure movies, which is why it took 10 more years to become a movie, since none of those were huge hits. It has this kernel of an idea in it that's fantastic, that it's just really, really difficult to get out there with just three people talking at each other when the action and stuff is supposed to be ramping up. It gets super philosophical and weird. That's what's great about the book, because there's revelations and all these interesting ideas. But in a movie that feels, even though that's all in there, it feels like a letdown. And I think that's what people responded to. But there's another book, a cheap pulp entertainment book that he wrote before Jurassic Park in the 80s, called Congo. And Congo reads like the greatest adventure movie you've ever seen. Everything about it is cool. It's basically it's as old as the Jungle Adventure is in literature. It's no less than the literal hunt for King Solomon's mines and the diamonds and gold that lie within it. Of course, it's a high-tech company that's investigating some deaths that happened on another expedition that they sent. The tech in it is written in this fascinating way, and it still sounds futuristic today, even though it was written in like 1987 or something. Just amazing. And it's got everything that a kid could want, Joel. It's got apes, it's got lasers, it's got it actually doesn't have a character name. That's just in the movie.
Herkimer, yeah, whatever.
It doesn't, but so anyway, here's a lot of money. Here's basically Amblin Entertainment, Paramount Pictures making a Jungle Adventure. Frank Marshall's directing. Frank Marshall had previously directed Anarachnophobia and Alive, about the poor soccer team that crashed in the Andes in Chile. And those films are, I don't know, Anarachnophobia may not be your style of thing, but that's a really, really good modern monster movie take.
I got to stop you. You keep saying, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia instead of Anarachnophobia, which is a great Marillion
A couple of you guys know why that little malapropism showed up in the show. We'll say no more about that. But Arachnophobia, forgive me, spiders, we're all on the same page. You guys probably knew what I was talking about anyway, right? I hope.
Yeah.
I hope. Alive. So he made good movies, and that progress from a silly monster movie to a really deep survival drama with all the bells and whistles that's a step toward, now here's something for everybody that's truly remarkable. Frank Marshall is a super producer who's not a terrible director, but as it turns out, now that we've got 7 films or so in the bag, is not a very good director either. But where Congo really goes wrong is that they hired a Tony Pulitzer-nominated playwright who had just won the Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay for Moonstruck, John Patrick Shanley, who's a fantastic writer. And they hired him to adapt Congo into a movie, and he just read it and thought it was crap. You can just feel his contempt for the material on almost every scene in the movie. Or maybe I'm reading too much. I can't read John's mind, but maybe he just thought, I got to get rid of everything that's Crichton-esque about this and make it as silly fun as possible. And what you end up with is a movie it is silly fun. I mean, if you like I have, if you take it to your breast and through the years, you watch it again and again, and you try and make your peace with what it is. At this point now, I can watch Congo and be like, this is fun. Take your Stop Eating My Sesame Cake. That's really funny. It's fun and funny, and it's in the movie, and I really, really dig it. Speaking of cameos, there's a couple of great cameos in Congo. Maybe we'll speak about cameos later. We'll see how long I talk about adaptations. Maybe cameos will be next week. But I'm sorry to go on and on about Congo. It's stupid, but it just shows you what one of the biggest problems of the adaptations is that you revere something, even something stupid like Congo, and in the end, it is just a stupid adventure with apes, apes, talking apes, and laser guided machine guns and stuff. Like it's really, really pulpy, and a great hippo attack scene, which they also boofed up in the movie.
Yes, they did.
Damn. And the movie also is just this, it's basically shot on a jungle soundstage. There's some incredible location shooting in the jungle, but whenever it narrows down to the camp and the talking, you really don't feel like you're anywhere but on the stage. You can almost feel the cameras tracking and moving around behind you. It goes from really great wide shots of extras walking in the mountains to really, really unmatching studio work, which is how they did those movies in the past. So that in and of itself doesn't necessarily suck, but really what you have is something you revere, a book you loved, a book where because of the nature of books, which we just talked about, the movie's already here. It's already here. Your perfect version of that is here. And then stupid John Patrick Shanley comes around and he's just like, la, la, la. It makes it stupid, and you just feel utterly let down by the basic, what feels like the lack of respect for something that goes up on screen. And as corny as Congo is, and how it totally doesn't make for a very good dance theme, Joel.
It really
obscure movies that no one's seen don't make great dance scenes.
So it's still a perfect example of this, because it's my most easily to articulate version of, I loved this. My version of this movie is truly great, and everyone would love it for all time. And yours isn't, and it feels like you didn't. And I could be wrong. He might have been doing his best, or he might have just been ill-suited to the material. But your version isn't very good. You've got a really celebrated writer just not taking any of the concepts very seriously. And you've got, frankly, a director who couldn't write his way out of a paper bag, who's just accepting all of those changes and shooting it as is without a lot of pushback to make the thing great. And that's the perfect recipe, Joel, for a failed adaptation, in my opinion.
My example of that, and I will not go into it in depth, is Mrs. Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. That book is an absolute delight. It is as a fantasy novel, and as a great kind of secret world building. It's really a lot of fun, and the movie just missed the mark. Just was not good. Do you like? I have a couple favorites. I have a couple movies that I thought
Please, were because really most of my favorite books have yet to be turned into movies.
Yeah. So well, I really, The Martian, Andy Weir's The Martian, and then being turned into and
particularly the longer version of The Martian, which it just has more of the book in it. It was really a delight to pop that in and to be like, this is great. This is just more of a movie.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And of course, the other one that I had all ready to go has now left my brain. Crap. And it's another modern one here. I'm going to be, I will say, I get to, now we did say we were going to talk about adaptations into movies, but because, when you adapt something into a series, especially if it's like an HBO or a place like that where they're gonna, like a Game of Thrones, where you can take the time
where you have a fighting chance to make it. If it's a pretty beefy book, you have a fighting chance to really get the essence of it there. Whereas what do we talk about? All of the versions of The Great Gatsby are terrible for very different reasons. But that's a book that feels like a movie when you're reading it. and it just goes wrong all the time. And part of that is it's tough to get all of that in a little contained 2 hour and change thing, right, or even 2.5 hour thing. It's hard.
Yep. And
we've talked about Dune about that too many times, and we'll continue to talk about Dune until you come over here and just chase me away with a broom, because I'll always talk about Dune. But it's that the fun of Dune is its impossibility to adapt, and how do you do it? And yet, why are these filmmakers inspired to do it? That's fun. But you were about to say, sorry, Joel.
Oh no! Anywhere's the Martian. I also the other book that and to movie adaptation that I really enjoyed. It's very particular, and it has lots of departures from the book, but it's Nick Hornby's High Fidelity, and John Cusack essentially adapting it for an American audience. But in terms of, while a lot of the details and some of the things were tweaked, and it maintains the same energy, the same what's the word I'm looking for? It's the same sort of journey that the main character goes on, and that kind of
the growth and the lesson and the underlying philosophy survives that adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That's
because because the tone of it takes it, and makes the adaptation probably even in a weird way, even though it's a criticism I have of the movie, the tone of it from English to American is a hit. It's a thing that the film just battles against, and frankly loses the battle of it, and by the time it's over. So the fact that all that other great stuff that keep it buoyant and keep us enjoying it and keep us on its side, which is important, is still there, is important. And that comes from the opposite of what I was talking about. It's why I think John must have not liked Congo, because obviously John Cusack loved High Fidelity, and that love, for better or worse, but mostly for better, is in there. At least it starts at a point of, I really want this to be great. You could feel that when you're watching it.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And all right, so we're gonna leave
the other place that the limited series really, really helps as adapting the classics, essentially, which is a tough thing to do. They're a great movie version of Great Expectations, but that's a smaller book. You could never do Bleak House, or it's very difficult to do something like David Copperfield or whatever, just to use all my Dickens as an example. Those are difficult adaptations because they're multi-generational, and they spawn throughout these big spans of time. But limited series just does wonders with those. We've talked about that when we talked about Jane Austen stuff, how the 4 hour and change Jane Austen limited series is, while they're not necessarily always better than their 2 hour Hollywood counterparts, you have room for all of it there, and you really do feel like the author's voice survives so much better on that level. There's an adaptation that came and went. Andrew Davies, probably the world's best adapter of classic literature to the screen from a writing standpoint, did a version of well, I used it as an example of books you can't do, but of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace with Paul Dano and
right.
It's still hard adaptation, but it's a limited series, a mini series that goes on and on for a bit, and it really does get the changes and the evolution of character that a shorter version, that even the Russian version, which is really long, or the Hepburn version, which is a really noble attempt at trying to tell that story in a very censored way for its era, but nevertheless really trying to tell that story and do honor by it. It's funny that a limited series from just a few years ago that no one gives a second thought to anymore really nailed one of the most critical and amazing pieces of literature out there.
Right.
And that's cool. So we're living in a time where we're kind of coming out of that time now. Now we're living in a time where that is probably on Roku with commercials forced into it. Now we're living on the time of the great content purge. But for a few years there, we were living in the content era, and they would just make just about anything that they had a team set up to make to compete their way into our homes over our streaming services. Yep. And that really did. It produced a bunch of total schlock and disposable crap, but it's always been thus. It also produced some really they were going to ever let us do this. And here it is. It's neat. So I just can't, you gotta have a fully stocked cabinet full of cocoa to get through that, even as a, you know what I mean? Even as an adaptation, but I cannot recommend that enough. It's Dano, who's great. We call him the bat for the fences actor because he's so bonkers in so many things. So to get to see him playing a person living through a really important time with lots of dimension and stuff, it's not that it's revelation. We've seen him do that here and there before, but it really is special. It's not an easy. He's sort of it's kind of a three-headed dragon, War and Peace, but he's great. And Lily James, who's a princess of a person and is always cast as a dream girl or often as a princess, literal or figurative. And she basically is that in this as well. She's this perfect, Tolstoy's idea of this perfect, virtuous, virginal, beautiful person, but goes through this really weird sections of chapters in the book where she's being seduced by an obvious unscrupulous villain. And in the book, the character goes mad with lust, essentially, and needs to be locked in a room to protect her from her own terrible decisions that she's about to make. And that's a weird concept. And made weirder by the fact that none of the actors of them, there have been so many good ones who played this character throughout the ages. None of them were brave enough to go crazy here until her. And her madness with lust and her the way when the polite society breaks down, the way it completely corrupts her way of thinking and makes her lose her mind is believable, and it's just viscerally powerful on screen. So I can't recommend that enough. And that there's been a lot of those. I mean, just like you say, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, we're about to go on. One of my absolute favorite science fiction series books is about to. We're about to get the premiere of the on Apple Plus, and it's called Silo, but it's based on the series of books by Hugh Howey, starting with Wool, and then Silo, and then Dust, the first chapter of Wool is one of the single greatest chapters of any book that I have ever written. Nice. Certainly since the first section of Hyperion.
The Priest's Tale, right?
The Priest's Tale in Hyperion, yeah. The first chapter of Wool, that's the only thing I could compare it to, because I literally, after that chapter was done, I said out loud, holy shit. what did I just read? So I'm super excited to see how this translates.
Their other big sci-fi adaptation, idea. I can't remember what it is exactly, but with Jared Harris and everything, wasn't some big mega hit. It is kind of on Apple TV and stuff, but it was very lavish, and the nerds love it. And when they really, really love something, that tends to be a sign of a good adaptation.
Yeah, is that Foundation?
Yeah, Foundation. Yeah. Thank you. The name wasn't coming to me, but foundation is all-time sci-fi. So his Dark Materials just wrapped. That was really, really good and worth your time. There've been a lot of really good television. Really helps, and we're on a level now of effects and stuff that you can do some of this unimaginable things that a TV show in the 90s just couldn't even attempt to do, you know.
Right.
The imagination like can't outthink the effects. The effects can still stink, but you know, they can do just about anything. It's fun. So it's a fun time for adaptations on that level. And that, to me, when you really love a good book, if there's a miniseries of it, even if it's a miniseries from the 70s or something, I really think that's, you know, do a little reading, do a little research of your own. But I think those are much safer bets for being the book rather than some of these film adaptations, which don't manage it. That's to say there's some really, really great ones. The best, I think, if I have to pick just one, the best book to film adaptation ever is To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
I think that's
agree with that.
Just about perfect. And it's not a straight up adaptation, but I think it gets the inherent challenge. It's something that the Aaron Sorkin play that's very, very popular now, it just gets rid of, which is too bad. Maybe it doesn't get rid of it. Maybe I'm not being fair, but it really leans into Atticus Finch as period leading man. And of course, what's so great about the book is it's from his daughter's point of view.
Right.
And the movie has it both ways. It knows it can't quite just be that. So it gets that juggling act just right. And that's what's so incredibly lovely about it. So, but you guys don't need us to tell you that The Godfather's awesome, or that the Kill a Mockingbird's great, or that the Scarlet Letter is terrible. You know, these things are obvious. Usually.
So, I mean, I guess we'll throw it out there, though. Is there any
obscure movies that no one's seen don't make great dance scenes?
Okay, but are there obscure movies out there that are based on books that that more people should know about? Like, is there one that? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that, and I'm sure there is.
I'm sure there are, but I haven't given it any thought, so it's hard.
That's what I mean, dear listener, write us, let us know. Send us, and you know, we'll talk about them. Yeah, absolutely, we will. All right, let's move on to another daunting one, and this is daunting because there's a visual element, and of course we are an audio podcast, but we are going to talk about best studio logos. We're going to get all nerdy in here and do best and talk about the logos of the studios. And when they come up on the screen, we go, yay!
I love logos. But one of the real casualties of big corporations, big multinational corporations taking over the movie studios is, like, just to take Warner Brothers as an example, is that they want that. You know, they still want to throw up the logo, but they want that an AOL Time Warner or whatever. Now I don't know what I don't know what it says now, but it's something similar. You know, it takes these movies from the old era, and when they release them to video or they release them to streaming, they put this sort of generic modern logo at the beginning of it. And at least with Warner Brothers' case, the logo it does have the feel of a classic logo that you can sort of live with. That doesn't seem, what's the word when something anachronistic to the movie you're about to watch. Do you see that, Joel? I couldn't remember a word, and then I remembered it right away. That feels so good. It doesn't happen as often as we would like anymore.
Yeah.
How many times you guys sit there in your car fast forwarding going, when's he going to
when are they going to say the damn word?
Anachronistic. It's a great word. It sums it all up. It sums up a whole conversation in one word. That doesn't get better than that. So it's not a crime against art or humanity, but it just, the loss of logos. I remember one of my big accomplishments as a videotape collector was to finally get all the MGM, really United Artists, but MGM owned the rights to it at the time. This is why studio logos and things are complicated. James Bond movies. And if you had them all, they made this like not a picture, but a collage of different James Bonds doing different things. And they looked great on the shelf for a while. And now they're gone forever because they're VHS tapes. And why did you ever have a bunch of those? So stupid. But I had those. And one of the greatest things about them is if you watch them in order, you saw literally every United Artists opening film logo in the history of the studio. And they're some of the coolest ones ever. When asked to pick, it's hard for me to pick an absolute favorite movie studio logo, but when asked to pick one, I often pick the white line that spins into UA with the twinkling piano. Ting, ting, ting. It's so simple and elegant and just gorgeous. It's everything a logo should be. The 2 letters, no other writing. That piano sounds mysterious and magical. What kind of movie am I going to see? I don't even know yet based on that logo. And then and United Artists had a whole bunch of great ones throughout the years. But in the late 60s, I want to say mid 60s, that one is the best one that they ever have. Also, and of course, my enthusiasm, sorry, I apologize, Joel. My enthusiasm for logos carried me into the topic without talking about why we don't talk about the topic, which is if you're not watching me, you can't even see what I'm doing with the logo, let alone when we are not showing you even in the YouTube program, for those of you who don't watch it, which is all of you. You're not seeing these. This is like a purely visual. There's a little audio to it, but there's almost a purely visual thing.
Yep.
And to talk about a thing that's purely visual, lacking plot, lacking character, lacking all these other things on a podcast where you're listening, you might get my enthusiasm for some of these, but until you search them out and actually take a look at what we're talking about, and anyone interested in graphic design or whatever should do that. One of the greatest places to find really great filmmaking, some of the best filmmaking is in television commercials, because most television commercials are garbage, but every once in a while there's a genius one in there by a pretty decent filmmaker, because they're limited by this 30-second. You got to get the message across in this limited amount of time, and that's a real challenge. And to a much lesser degree, because the demands on you are much less from an artistic standpoint, are music videos, which we see a lot of really great directors doing work there. With graphic artists, especially graphic artists from a pre-computer time, it's movie logos. It really, really is. Logos really of any kind, corporate logos, cereal boxes. I mean, you go back and look at this stuff, but movie logos are really, really well done. One of the ones I love the most, getting back to Warner Brothers and one of the ones that was purged in the great DVD era of films, is making a bit of a comeback because a few filmmakers have sort of championed it, is the great black within red within black Saul Bass zoomy W, stylized W logo from Warner Brothers.
Warner Brothers, yep.
It's animated, but it's this weird, like, it's hard to explain how cool it is. It starts out as one thing, and then you sort of zoom into it, and then it's the same thing, but it's a different thing because the color schemes have been swapped. And then you settle on something that's very basic. And again, the one thing that's great about it is it's just red, black, and white. It's very, very simple. That logo, what did Nicholas Meyer, our most quotable film director, thank God for Nicholas Meyer, where would we be without him on the show? But he very famously said he refused to put that logo in front, which would have been era appropriate for his film Time After Time. Because he said it looked like something they would stamp on a piece of office furniture. So he's largely responsible for doing away with that very expensive designer thing that Warner came up with for most of the 70s and some of the early 80s. by bringing the Shield back. Warner Brothers is the Shield, and he has his. They had to create it especially for Time After Time, so it's a one-time only Warner Brothers Shield at the beginning of that movie, and I appreciate why that suits his film better. But when I remember watching Superman in the theater, I remember that red logo. It's also what they did with that red logo, because it takes a little time to develop, was as movies went on, through about 83, 84 or so, they started playing the movie's music underneath it, which is a neat thing to do with logos. So now when I watch even a minor movie like Deal of the Century or something that used to have that, and that I watched over and over and over again with that animation, I hear the music start and I just sit there and look at a mid-90s Warner Brothers Shield, and it breaks my heart. So Warner Brothers, United Artists, we're going to blame MGM for United Artists, the loss of that, because that's really their fault, not United Artists themselves, who Michael always argues with me about this. Well, Orion's still around. Well, they're not, though. The name is still around, but Orion Pictures, as it was, has not been a continuing entity. It died long ago. Same with United Artists. It's the names. It still exists, especially since Amazon bought it. Now it's starting to pop up on everything, but it's not what United Artists was before. United Artists was a studio that had the distribution power of a major studio, but didn't have the studio heads greenlighting this or that. It basically was this collective place for artists, for directors, for those sorts of people to get their sort of independently produced films released. And that idea is the opposite of, we have trillions of dollars to spend at Amazon, and we're just going to stamp this time-honored old name on something. I appreciate keeping the names alive, actually, but it's not the same. So I miss those. Whereas throughout the history, if you go back, any movie you watch by 20th Century Fox, you get the logo, Columbia. And even though that's Paramount, there, you get different variations of it, but that logo has stayed the same. It's only been remade, even the big one where you swoop over it and you come around the corner and there it is. Even that is, you still land on what has essentially always been the 20th Century Fox logo, which is a great one. And even now, when the Fox part is gone, and Disney's doing it, they still sort of maintain the shingle the way it was. There have been minor studios. Joel knows, because the last movie. I want to say another one, classic one, is Paramount. I've always liked Paramount Pictures with the mountain. Although Paramount really did animate their way out of a really classic look here in the modern era. Sure. But, they're playing. They're just it's all playing with it and all. They've created a standard created a logo, which now they can sort of break the rules of the logo. But it still lands on the same image. So it's very much like the 20th Century Fox. It's just theirs, for whatever reason, is more garish and ugly. I think it's all the colors that they try and get into it or whatever. And those poor Paramount logos, as cool as they are, they look that once you get into the 80s or so, they look or late 80s, I should say, they're so like of their time, that 90s era. It really does feel like you walked into a graphic design company in the 90s with all the little two-tone grays and the, you know what I mean? Like all that weird stuff. It's like, God, you guys they don't seem to get that it is classic. They just keep trying to make it better. A great one that has evolved, that is almost, no pun intended, universally great throughout the ages, even though they've changed dramatically, is the Universal logo. That's really how you take care of a great image. It's just really, really outstanding. All of theirs have been very much of their time, and yet they're all really, really great. I think part of it is there's no fanfare for Universal. There is now. There's da 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 boom boom boom. Fanfares, if done wrong, really, really ruin it. Lionsgate movies, man, those logos are really tough to sit through. They're butt ugly. They're too busy. They go on too long, and the song sucks. Everything about them is terrible. And yet every time they've changed their logo, it's gotten better, and it's still terrible. So where they started was with the metal gate opening and stuff, and you come through and it's like there's clouds in there. How's this supposed to work? It's just stupid, busy, and doesn't mean anything. And then when you finally settle on it, it doesn't say something cool. It says Lionsgate. Weak sauce. But hey, you're the kid among old giants. It's not totally fair to compare you to, but I still blech. A few ones worth knowing. I was about to say Joel knows this because the last movie we watched together was Blade Runner. Blade Runner was distributed by the Lad Company, and Blade Runner and the 4K Blade Runner of the green on black, which Lad Company logo is usually green on white. The green on black appearance of that logo, which Joel talked over, which I'm still a little mad at him at. I mean, I've forgiven him, but I haven't gotten completely over it yet. That healing, as you guys know, will take time. He didn't just talk over it. He sort of he disparaged that logo, let's just say. All right,
I did,
and it has this great, which is one of my favorites of all time. Like, partly because it means Blade Runner is about to start, or it means Chariots of Fire is about to start. Like the films, or it means Police Academy 3 is about to start. Yeah, it takes all kinds. The Lad Company did a bunch of different kind of stuff. But I love it. And the music is this, I don't know what it is, like a trombone or something, maybe a French horn. It's something that you don't normally hear carry like a theme, especially one that's delicate and pretty. That music, I found out much later in life, is by John Williams, of all people. Doesn't sound like him at all. Like the way the DreamWorks logo is like, okay, that's like if a guy, like if an alien was brought from 1,000 years in the future and said, create, we're going to download all this in your head. Now create the perfect 2 minutes of John Williams music. Like that's what would appear. This doesn't sound like him at all. And it's really, really well done and amazing. I love the Lad Company. I love in the late 90s. I love the Savoy Pictures logo. You remember that one with the buffalo?
I'm sure I will.
It's like an animated of these buffalo running and this really great theme, and then this like Roman numeral.
Oh yeah. There it is.
Multi-panels take over, and they become like a still image and a logo. And Savoy Pictures literally released only one good movie out of 18 before they finally said, "Apparently, we suck at movies, guys. Let's all go home and do something else." That one good movie is Shadowlands, by the way, with Anthony Hopkins and Deborah Winger. And there's some other fun movies in there, but there's just no good ones. It really was a company who didn't know what they were doing. Joel was reviewing some of these. Remember Steal Big, Steal Little, and Last of the Dogmen? And I mean, they all were like you could see why they thought they were good, but they were all like, compared to the stuff that was actually captured the zeitgeist, they were all radically out of step with that. Mm-hmm. So they failed, but I like that Savoy logo when I see it. You don't see it very often. I love logos. I love cool graphic design. I love things that are simple. I think as a writer and as a songwriter in particular, it just capturing the thing that's simple and fits is such a joy, but it's not an easy thing to do. A lot of the simple stuff, all the .coms are taken. You guys know how it is out there in the world. It's like you to strive for simplicity is really, really difficult. And I feel like you got 10 seconds, kid. Make something that sums, that gives us something that tells us where this is coming from. And I love watching those. I love all of them. I even love some of the bigger fancy ones. I think the Skydance one is pretty decent. I think Bad Robot is fun, and it goes from being complicated to simple, but it's a simple idea, which is why it works. Stuff like that. The A24 logo. Now that's almost unfair because that's a throwback logo to B movies of the 60s and early 70s, but the A24 logo is fantastic.
The Regency logo.
That one I don't like so much. That one, if you want to hear somebody rip on Regency, listen to the commentary on Gone Girl, or is it Gone Girl? Yeah, Gone Girl with Ben Affleck. David Fincher's like just mercilessly hammers the Regency logo about how crappy it is. I think it's Regency. I'm pretty sure that it is. Yeah.
Orion. Remember Orion?
Orion logos are fantastic and multi-purpose. They're great. And like I say, as part of the United Artists MGM sale to Amazon, they're back. You get to see those Orion logos now again at the beginnings of fairly crappy horror movies and such, but nevertheless, it's nice to have those back again. Orion was a super minor studio whose ownership bounced around from company to company before it won 2 consecutive Best Picture Oscars and then went bankrupt in 1993 or whatever.
Yeah, I want to say I think Orion maybe put out First Blood, and that
distributed it,
and that's what I always associate the Orion movie logo. It's like, here comes First Blood. And then if it's not First Blood,
Orion,
then I'm like,
it's Caddyshack, because you've got that really cool acoustic or a cappella Kenny Loggins intro to Caddyshack, and he starts all the 8 Kenny Logginses all start and while the logo is spinning, and it's like, I'm gonna get to. I was as far as the Caddyshack fan goes, I was pretty much only into the Gopher parts, but whatever.
And Screen Gems I always kind of thought was kind of a cool with the coming in front and then the boop.
It's not bad. Problem with Screen Gems is it comes before all the Underworld pictures, and it comes before all the Resident Evil pictures. So I associate it with pretty terrible stuff.
Of course. And of course, Marvel Studios, that's good in terms of its honoring its the comic book route.
And Brian Tyler's theme for Marvel is great. And Marvel is a thing where the brand is really selling the thing. For my money, that logo is too long. But I think all of the
keeps getting longer.
Yeah, it's just, you guys, less is more, kind of. I don't mind the theme playing out, but that idea of the comics coming in, and them changing depending on the movie, or DC does some similar sort of ripoff of that, which also works great. Those are really cool. I mean, they're literally graphic stories that come from a graphic artist place. The art and they even though I do think they're too ornate and too long in a Lionsgate sort of way, I think the art, the fact that it honors and puts the art and the variety of the art and the storytelling forward, that really does sell you what a Marvel thing is, or what a comic book experience is at the movie. So I like them for that reason.
All right, well, let's move on to just past the movie studio logo. And let's talk about what you see next, which is, in most cases, the title sequences.
Same drawback to discussing title sequences. There's too many cool ones to discuss. Same problem as books, same problem as logos. And it also shares the logo problem in that you can't see what we're talking about. And seeing and hearing the title sequences really is the key to experiencing them or understanding them. So I may talk about a few that you like. Some of the greatest ones are the movie has already started and the titles are just playing. That's nothing wrong with that. That works like a charm. We'll get on with the movie. Of course, in the modern era, especially in an epic movie sense, let's just not have. They know what they know. They came to see Green Lantern 5. Let's just not even have the title at the beginning of the thing. Let's just get on with the story, and we'll put all that crap at the end. And if they want to stay to the end, to the hidden scene at the very end where Green Lantern goes to his favorite sushi restaurant, then you can do that. If you're a total chump and an idiot, sure, sit there for 9 minutes and let everybody else go on with their lives, even though artists have sort of an anti-artistic statement yet to give you. It seems to me that any of the preview of coming attractions scenes after the credits come after what we're calling the main credits, which is what used to be the opening credits, which are now at the back of the movie. So blah, blah, blah. What are some great ones? Opening credits. Maurice Binder's James Bond credits. Like,
sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. They're not all good, but they have all the good and bad of a extended, everybody gets credit at the top of the movie, very old school. And I love that they still do this. They don't show the whole mountain of people, but they still show art direction and makeup and stuff that normally would not be in an opening credit sequence at all. And I love that. I mean, I love Star Wars too, where it's just like, Star Wars, there's no credits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that Star Wars wasn't the first movie to do that, but that at that time, that was a revolutionary thing that caused all kinds of issues because nobody was doing that. Now that's the thing. There's no TV theme songs anymore.
Right.
Because apparently people can't be bothered to sit through a minute and a half of like the Silver Spoons theme, which to me is why that's so awesome. Why would you not want to do that? I don't understand.
I have my ringtone is my favorite modern TV theme song, and I'm vamping here so that I can just quick play it. I don't know, it's not going to work because I have my headphones on and it's only going to play in my headphones. But it's The Good Place, where it's just like, and it's literally like 7 seconds long.
That's better than nothing.
Yep.
But
it's like a boom. The green screen says The Good Place. Boom. That's it.
I hate the loss, especially in sitcoms, especially comedies. Yeah. But if anything, I mean, go back and watch 7 seasons of Hill Street Blues. I guarantee you, the one thing that's great every episode is the 2 minutes of Mike Post's theme music and those cars driving through the streets of Chicago in the rain. I mean, it's bliss.
Yep.
Take a breath. Enjoy these things, or corporations will get rid of them, which they have done. It's depressing. I mean, I guess not so much cable, prestige cable, Sopranos, Game of Thrones. I don't know how long the House of the Dragon credits go on. Forever, for 7 minutes. They really take too long. But at least in that setting for dramas, or especially for speculative fiction adaptations, that's made a comeback, which I appreciate. Yeah. But I miss all that, man. I miss all what you want to. I mean, would you want to watch like Night Court without the Night Court theme? Like if they just took that away, they could. You wouldn't want to do that, right? You wouldn't want to not hear Denise Williams and Johnny Mathis at the beginning of Family Ties, right? That would that'd be criminal.
Mm-hmm. And we definitely want to hear like some night.
Yeah. Al Jarreau.
Yeah.
So,
and what? Hey, we'll even get to some of like the 90s sitcoms had had some bops, as the kids say, for theme songs. Whether it's Full House or DuckTales. I mean, there are some serious. They put some serious thought into some of the theme songs of sitcoms and kids shows and stuff. Those are awesome, and we don't have that anymore. I mean, I'll give it up for Bluey. Bluey has a kick butt.
Yeah, it's not that they've been scrubbed from the face of the earth, and we can't. And it's not like they've gone back and taken them out of our old favorite shows. So that's not happened. I don't know why I'm complaining. I'm not exactly complaining about that, but I'm equating them not creating them anymore to taking them away, which is not exactly what they've done. So that has nothing to do with opening title sequences to movies, which is what we're supposed to be talking about.
Now, yeah. So for a movie,
it's adjacent.
It's adjacent,
but it's not exactly the same thing. So sorry about that little rant. You heard a logo rant in this episode. You've heard a TV theme song rant. So you're getting some of my best stuff.
There you go.
Rant wise. But opening theater. So I mentioned the Bond movies because they're huge. I love that the orchestra tuning up and playing the big theme for those old films where you basically are just looking at still panels with animated titles and credits. Those are great. So I mean, that's where this all started. I know there's some really, really great ones of those. Ten Commandments is a really good one if you want to see something done in that style that had a budget to it. Obviously that's not my era of movie going as much as I like that stuff. And as much as I like a good overture or whatever, like there's some really neat, we'll just start with animations. They're not my favorite kind, but when they're done right, like think the opening of the Pink Panther. Or what did we watch the other day? 7% Solution has a really fun animated like caricatures of the characters you're about to experience. And it even has little literature footnotes explaining who they are and stuff. It's really fun and engaging.
Yeah.
I watched a movie recently that I really, really love, a Nick Hornby adaptation. Well, it's been the Nick Hornby. It's not even a Nick Hornby adaptation. The Nick Hornby original screenplay, An Education.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That has a fantastic, fun theme, like, early 60s jazz theme song mixed with these little animations about what it's like to be and mixed with montage. It's like really a whole bunch of disciplines combined together for one magical sequence that really puts you in the world of the story, where you see basically what it's like at that time to be a student in high school when you're a girl, because it's different than when you're a guy, when you're actually learning about stuff. They're like learning how to walk in a straight line with a book on their head and all this just dumb crap to prepare them to be good wives and homemakers and perhaps, if necessary, governesses. So it just tells you all that without telling you anything. I mean, that's ultimate show not tell. My favorite giant, bloated, goes on forever title sequence of all time, and it's the biggest, most expensive. It's more expensive than most of the movies from 1978, and it's only a title sequence, is R. Greenberg and Associates, who made some of the best ones of this era of Superman the movie. Which has graphics, which has like microscopic effects. You're flying through space. John Williams' heroic score you pretty much never get sick of. It has one of those disaster movie like March of the Stars where you just keep seeing recognizable names from other things until you're down to Mark McClure and Sarah Douglas or whatever. And that's joyful. Like it's, wow. Oh, wow. That person's in it. Oh, wow. You know, like it's really, really cool. You know, I don't know how long Trevor Howard is in Superman. Screen time wise, not very long. He's probably got 11 lines or something, but he gets the big marquee, which he must have loved sitting there. And of course, I didn't know when I was a kid in 78, when I was 6, I just turned 6. I didn't know what any of this was, but the surround, the 4-channel surround effects of those titles swooshing by you, and you're flying through space, and the music, and just from an audio standpoint, you're just captivated by it. And I loved that sequence when I was a kid. I loved it. Other great R. Greenberg stuff, you know, Alien, that where the hieroglyphics appear. The fact that he looked at the fact that Ridley Scott, this is really visionary of him, looked at the poster art, which had almost nothing to do with the movie. It's really like a Rosemary's Baby, just suggestive of what the movie might be sort of art, and said, these guys need to be involved in the credit sequence and then we'll tie it together, which no one ever seems to do. But more than that, they, without even really trying, they've captured what the thing is, without having seen they've seen anything but like a still photograph of the egg, and that's all they were given. And the script, and they came up with this, and this is what my movie is. So he got really excited, and that's how that found its way into Alien. All of the Alien movies, at least the first 3 Alien movies, will say, I think have stunning credit sequences and credit ideas. The 80s graphics mixed with animation and stuff and early computer work, the Terminator opening credits, and the thing, of course, that a long credit sequence needs is music. It needs a song. It doesn't necessarily need it, but most of the really, really great ones have a song, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes the song is the thing. It's just the titles, the opening, like the aforementioned Chariots of Fire. What a fantastic title sequence that is. And it's just a scene, but it's buoyed by that incredible music that you never hear in the movie. Really, you hear it again at the end for the closing credits. That's cool. Stuff like that, man. I just love that. I love that settling into a movie.
Yeah.
I don't mind that they've done away with them. When on the Richard Donner and Tom Mankiewicz are talking during the commentary on the Superman thing, and they're like, wow, can you believe this? Like, this is amazing. Like, nobody does this kind of thing anymore. It really is still very, very cool. But even them, a minute and 40 seconds into it, are like, Jesus, how long do these go on? And then they're like, they move all this to the back of the movie now. And Dick sort of under his breath says, that's probably for the best. just get into the thing. You know what I mean? But Superman starts with the curtain opening. It starts with the old black and white TV era Daily Planet model. Then you swoop into space, and then you get the credits. And then after the credits, you get a whole nother suite of music, the Krypton theme, while we reveal the longest. It just takes its time to get going. Yeah. But in doing that, it prepares you for something truly different and epic certainly than any other Superman adaptation had been to that point. But also just, it doesn't do any much work of telling the story. It really does just take its time to immerse you in the style of the thing and the mood of the thing. And I do love those. I do love just cutting to the chase too. I love the opening of The Abyss with just the logo from the poster with the great theme song, very much like, it's not the same, but very much like The Good Place. It's just, you got 12 seconds, guys, go. That's really neat and can get you into something just as quick. So, but I love title sequences, and I like the lack thereof. I love when we get opening titles at the end of a movie. I may not sit for the titles to scroll every time, or even most times, because I really just don't do that. I know I should, as a purist, as someone who respects the credits themselves and doesn't think they should be edited out or skipped on the menu or whatever,
or moved up to a tiny little box up here. And
exactly. So I don't like any of that, but at the same time, man, I'm getting out of Dodge once that closing credits is over, because I'm not reading those things. Yeah. And I think I always used to be sort of a purist about it until about the mid 90s. Remember how the Matrix movies end? Yeah. Like the music was so awful, that proto-industrial dance rock from the crap 90s. Those 90s movies sent you
the Chemical Brothers
running for freedom from the sound of the terrible music that was put at the end. And I think once those came along, they cured me of having to sit there, because there's no way I'm sitting through this crap. I don't know how long this is going to go.
Along those lines, though, that kind of use, this was 9 Inch Nails, but in going through all these, in preparing for the show, going through a bunch of sequences, that beginning of 7, using 9 Inch Nails and all the creepy imagery and the sort of the glitchy graphics. I really,
you want to see some opening credit sequences? Regency logos aside, David Fincher movies have some of the absolute best. I don't even like 7, but the credits are an absolute work of art. There's no question about that.
I love like retro animated things like Catch Me If You Can and Down with Love. Those great,
the animations, that's kind of where I started with those, because those are like, in a way, those are taking the easy way out, but those are a lot of work. They really are a ton of work relatively, and so you've got to kind of they're the ones where you really have to respect them as their own thing. Catch Me If You Can
Yeah,
it's
Catch Me If You Can
fantastic.
is really fun.
Opening credit sequence, so good.
Okay. We're moving right along. We're plugging. Yeah. So now we are gonna go. Now we teased it earlier.
We'll come back to these topics, like we said. We'll come back to these.
Yeah.
It's where these were what we thought they'd be. They're fun to talk about. They're great ideas.
Yeah. Do you, dear listener, have a great opening title sequence that you're like, oh my god, like you got to talk about how great this was,
or just even when you don't think so great, but that the one that sets you up for the movie, whatever. We'd love to hear from you guys as to what your favorites are. And it's
like, and then we, I'm always like, and this is I talk about this a lot in my job is setting up. We have to establish who we are, and then we can start playing with the form and sort of breaking from it. And Marvel, they had done I think even had we gone through Avengers at that point, or no, maybe so we had Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and all these things, and that and they all had that Marvel movie tone. And then you get Guardians of the Galaxy, which is Chris Pratt dancing around an alien planet listening to Come and Get Your Love. And that was such a departure. And it's like, oh yeah, this is going to be a very different Marvel film. So it's like, yeah, you get to, you establish something, then you can break the form.
The follow-up with Groot dancing while that giant battle with that monster in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is happening like in slow motion sort of behind him. Yeah. Both those credit sequences are fantastic. I would agree.
Yep. All right. So let's go into other elements of movies that often appear in the blink of an eye and then they're gone. Best cameos. Do you like cameos?
Our buddy Trish has suggested this, I believe, more than once.
Trish is like, what, how about cameos?
And it's a neat idea, but again, it encompasses this whole massive thing. It's very daunting to look at it and go, oh, I love and the bigger issue with this one is I'm pretty much anti-cameo. Or if I like a cameo, what I really like is a small walk-on part by a recognizable person, which is not, for my money, what a cameo really is. Cameo didn't start here, but it became famous with the Hitchcock cameos, and all that is Hitchcock's reflected in the store window. That's that kind of cameo I can't have any issue with. Go for it. Yeah. Go with God. Yeah, that doesn't hurt anything. But these cameos as gags, which is the era we're in now, if you're going to have somebody super famous show up in the middle of your movie for only 13 seconds, it can be more than this, but what it's absolutely positively 100% going to be is a distraction from anything that's going on in the story. Maybe a pleasant one, who knows? But it absolutely is. It has no value in immersion that I can think of, and even the best cameos I can think of don't have any sort of value in immersing you in the story and keeping your empathy engaged. They do the opposite. They demonstrate to you that this is fake, that this is not a thing you're watching, that this is an outwardly thing, and that now everybody who's been working to get you into the world of the story is taking a step back and letting you see the cracks and the seams of the thing. And I've never, ever liked that. I mean, a comedic cameo in a comedy is fun. Mm-hmm. It really is. Or a little part by an actor you don't know, like going back to Superman, like the pimp. Say, dude, that is a bad outfit. Woo! Like that's just a guy with a little line, with a little moment who gets to take stage for a second. That's not a cameo because nobody knows who that guy is, unless you watched Cleopatra Jones over and over again, which in that era you probably did not. So little parts and little things where, random dude or random lady show up and do something crazy is sort of fun. But cameos by famous people or by characters from other stories, so hard to see the value of that. And when I think of great, like, uncredited appearances in movies, this isn't a great one necessarily, but a fun one is Robin Williams' character in Kenneth Branagh's Dead Again.
Yeah.
Where he's a big movie star at the time in a small role in a little movie where he probably shot his stuff in 2 or 3 days consecutively wherever he was available in there. What's fun about that is Robin, even though he's got some Robinisms in it, his talking about taking a dump certainly comes to mind. But mostly when it's time to buckle down and be this exposition guy, he does it in an entertaining Robin Williams way. But he honors the concepts of the film, that he really does a lot of the heavy lifting and explaining to us and to our hero. So I like that sort of thing. That's one that I like, I guess. But that's not even a cameo. That's a guy who's in a small role in a film that's outsized with his celebrity at the time. I'm not even sure that counts. That was called a cameo, but compared to the Hitchcock stuff, I mean, it isn't even close.
The most famous cameo I seem to remember from my youth was when Sean Connery appeared at the end of Robin Hood, Prince of Tides.
That's a good one.
As
got paid $1.2 million for doing that little scene.
Yeah. And then, of course, you get the parody version of Robin Hood Men in Tights, where Patrick Stewart arrives at the end of the movie, doing essentially the same cameo, parodying the cameo. That made me laugh.
Connery played, along with Audrey Hepburn as Marion, played Robin Hood and Robin and Marion. So one of Richard Lester's best movies, might be his best movie. And that story and that reimagining of an older Robin Hood coming back from the Crusades and getting back into his old habits was very much inspired Prince of Thieves' approach to the material. So his showing up at the end of that is even more than, and it's the happy ending of the movie. Like, there's that cameo, really, it's silly, but it really, because Connery was a huge star at that point. Again, he hadn't been for a while, but he was again. Didn't really take anything from that film. That film's a little surfacey and superficial anyways.
Right. I'm trying to think of other ones that really did work for me. Well, here, before, I want to get your take on this. In the J.J. Abrams reboot of Star Trek, with Leonard Nimoy appearing at the.
But that's Leonard Nimoy playing the character he was in Star Trek as a continuation of his character from all those stories in a minor role, not a cameo. So no, I don't have a problem with that at all. I don't love that movie, and I don't love any of those Abrams Star Trek movies, because I think they missed the point of Star Trek quite a bit.
Sure.
Which I think you can still do and be that kind of movie. And I think he didn't even try and engage with that stuff very well. And like all Abrams projects, all but maybe one, all of his movies, like the second time you watch them, they're half as good. And every time after, they lose a percentage, where it's just like this busy, jabby, jokey shit that I was riveted by when I first sat through it. I'm sick of almost all of it now. Like, it's really weird how his films, not so much his Mission Impossible movie, but certainly the Star Wars movies and definitely the Star Trek movies. They just are so greatly diminished when you revisit them. But I don't, to get back to the point, I don't consider that a cameo. I mean, that's a role. It's him continuing the role into a further adventures of the Star Trek universe. I know it's back in time or whatever, and it's a reboot, but that idea is what's left at the end of Star Trek, even after you've seen it a dozen times. The idea that we can do our own Star Trek and still have everything that happened in Star Trek be honored, and everything can be at peace with itself in the universe, is a genius idea. The way he does it is really smart. And the way he frees himself from the shackles of previous Star Trek through a story convention that is interwoven importantly through the entire movie.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's really good writing and good thinking things through. So I still love that part. And Spock is integral to that, I think. So
Okay.
I dig it. But I don't, again, is that a cameo?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Same way the Robin Williams thing is probably, but it isn't a cameo. I mean,
sure. Now
his name's in the opening credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. It is in the opening credits. Muppet movies always have tons of little cameos and stuff. But one part where it actually worked really, really well, in my opinion, was in that 2011 the Jason Segel sort of reboot of it, where Walter, the character of Walter, is having to decide if he's a man or is he a Muppet, and in that little sort of music sequence, he's looking at a mirror. And reflected back at him is oh my God, Jim Parsons. Yeah, is Jim Parsons from Big Bang Theory, who absolutely, it's like at that moment you're like, oh my God, yeah, that is the human version of this character.
right.
And so that they're and he's just lip syncing the Walter part back at him as this character decides, is he a Muppet or is he a man? I thought, in terms of Muppet cameos, of which there are always many, many Muppet cameos, that one, I thought that one, in terms Muppet of serving the story,
our story with Muppets, where there's always some sort of journey and they meet all these celebrities along the way. Like that's literally the formula for doing a Muppet movie. There's some variations, but that's certainly what the Muppet movie is. It's got all these stars in it who, again, only worked for one day with some Muppets and then moved on. That's what the Muppet Show is, if you zoom far enough out to see it in its whole existence. So I have no problem I have really no problem with that. I really don't have any problem with that at all. I just thought of a really great one and I've forgotten because I kept talking about the Muppets. That was a mistake.
Oh no. Let's see, a couple others that possibly
here, Tom Waits in Fisher King.
Oh yeah,
that is dynamite.
Yeah, great cameo. Absolutely,
and I really do think that, by modern standards, is what we consider a cameo. He really is in one scene where he doesn't even really move. You know what I mean? And and they could have gotten any great character actor to do that. Tom Noonan could have done that great. Like anybody. The world was your oyster, and what they got was Tom Waits playing this disabled veteran in Grand Central Station, given this little bleak outlook on life, and it's just magic, and it pulls you in as opposed to pushing you away, which is what you hope that sort of thing will do.
Music guy. Speaking of music guy cameos, Bruce Springsteen in High Fidelity. It's
that's very Hitchcockian though, right? He's not really in it. He just appears somewhere.
It's happening in the character of Rob's, in John Cusack's mind. Right. He's like, I wish I could, and it's like Bruce would be able to tell me, and then you cut to Bruce Springsteen just sitting on a stool in a blank room, and they have this kind of quick dialogue back and forth, and it's just, again, it works in the story of this is a guy who just he won't let go of this fantasy idea of what his own life should be, and of course in his fantasy life he'd just be able to turn to Bruce Springsteen for advice. So I thought in terms of like music guy cameos, that one's pretty good. Let's see, I'm looking at other ones. You have the Bob Barker cameo in Happy Gilmore. That's entertaining.
Yeah, but that's not a cameo.
Yeah, that's right. He's credited, I think.
Not only that, his part is big and important. Just because he's famous for something else and in a movie isn't make it a cameo. It just isn't. That isn't a cameo at all. It just isn't.
Mm-hmm.
The Springsteen thing absolutely is. I think even the Tom Waits thing strains what I think of as a cameo. Even though it's only about as long as the Sean Connery thing, which absolutely is a celebrity cameo, So it's hard. It's hard to define what it is.
Yeah.
A small role by a famous person, I don't think that is enough to make it count. I mean, if that were not Bob Barker and it was just some other guy, it wouldn't be considered. It wouldn't even be. It wouldn't even flirt with the category of cameo. That's an important character in that movie.
I like
not a super important one over the scope of the movie, but it's important,
Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts at the end of The Player.
It's not bad, although The Player is objectively terrible, but that's not a bad one.
Sure, but yeah, and how, you know,
because you do see the thing they're talking about, how stupid it's going to become super stupid by the end of the movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's well done. Although that's a film again where you already have 900 famous contemporaries of Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts in the film, so that cameo, while I get why you like about it, it also blurs the lines in a way that I don't think is particularly useful for the point the thing's trying to make.
Sure.
I mean, if you really wanted to take down, you know, Hollywood celebrities and stuff, then what do you cast mountains of them in your movies of that era for? You're what are you saying? In the end, you're not saying much. Robert Altman. Right. Sorry, not a big Altman fan.
Let's see what. Okay, so but
it's funny. Anytime you see the famous people playing, like the famous people playing the real people on screen in something, you know, it's really great. We talked about one in Mr. Holmes by Jeffrey Hatcher and Bill Condon. Nicholas Rogue, who played young Sherlock Holmes in Barry Levinson's Young Sherlock Holmes in 1985. Plays Sherlock Holmes in the movie that the actual Sherlock Holmes is watching about one of his adventures. There's a cameo, man. That's a cameo that's just packed to the rim with meaning, and it doesn't even vaguely take you other than, oh my God, it's, you know, okay, I have maybe had that moment, but that whole thing, the connections, Rogue's, you know, he's a fantastic character actor in his own right, even though he's most famous for the one role he did when he was a kid. You know, he's never really had that sort of big part in a thing ever since.
Right.
His being able to be the Sherlock Holmes of movies and the movie that our hero is actually watching, it's delightful. It's really, really fun. So that's a good one.
Yeah.
To go along with the Robert Altman style stuff.
Sure. I'm also thinking this list that I'm looking at here.
Also, I'll go one step further on you, Altman, and The Player. Yeah. There's no movie of that era with Bruce Willis and Julia Roberts in it that's as stupid as the example of a stupid movie that you're showing at the end of your movie, which makes the point of your thing, again, completely watered down and stupid, if it has a point at all, which I'm not sure that it does. So, God rest your soul. Back to the drawing board, brother. That's all I have to say to Altman when I'm done watching just about all of his crap.
Of course, famously, Stan Lee has cameos in.
There was the great. Marvel, now that Stan Lee's dead, do we keep bringing him back digitally for his stupid cameos? Yes. What was my answer to that? You asked me that in one of those Ask Ryan what he thinks about shit segments, and I was like, hell yeah. I mean, the acting's not going to be any worse. He would probably, I mean, I don't see in any, it's not like bringing Elvis back or Steve McQueen back to sell Bud Light. You're bringing Stan Lee back to help promote and have fun with his own stuff.
With the thing that he created.
Which in a way that he always had fun with and never objected to. So there's no reason to believe that he would mind his visage or his image being used in that capacity. And as stupid as they were, and every single one of them is stupid and worthless and wrecks the movie for while they're happening, they're all beloved. Everyone loves them. So yeah, why not keep the ball rolling with deep fake Stan Lee? I mean, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't keep doing that. They have not kept doing that, though, have they?
Yeah, I don't believe so.
No, so they're honoring that he's gone now. But I mean, what? In a way, it's like, of all the shit Hollywood has just crapped on throughout the ages, and they really have done a lot, this is the thing they got all weird and purist, you know what I mean, protective of the terrible Stan Lee Marvel cameos. Just like, throw him up there, man. It's hard to imagine wherever he is that he wouldn't be delighted to have his sort of goofiness carried on in that way in the future, right? Even those started as actual cameos, you know, when he's walking out of the school as a security guard with Lou Ferrigno and the Hulk. That's a fantastic cameo. It only says two things. They just got stupid. By Thor, they were off the wall. Let's stop the whole goddamn movie for 2 minutes of Stan Lee clowning around.
Yep.
That's not, I mean, that is not helpful to any movie. So I hate them, but I love them because they really do personify what is all encompassingly terrible about a celebrity cameo in a movie in this perfect, pure way that even I can't be sort of impressed with, even though everything about them is wrong. It's like, hey, at least everything about them is wrong. That's commitment. You know what I mean? It's not like the Altman thing where I'm like, what? Why? For what reason? What are you doing? Right. I totally understand what's going on in the Stanley cameos. Even if I disagree with all of it, I'm like, okay, you know, it's like my villain appeared, did everything I said not to do, and somehow made it work for the whole nation.
Yep.
Tough to argue with that, in my opinion.
Couple others here that I know you're not a big rom-com guy, but Dustin Hoffman has a pretty great cameo in The Holiday. It's really contrived, but they're just Jack Black's character's talking about different theme songs in movies, talking about Chariots of Fire, John Williams, all that stuff, and then he gets to The Graduate, and he's talking about, you know, Simon and Garfunkel, Mrs. Robinson, and there's Dustin Hoffman just sort of standing down looking at movies at the other end of the aisle.
Is it Annie Hall where they're waiting in the line at some movie theater and Woody Allen's arguing with some guy about some writer or something, and he's like, you know, blah blah blah, you're wrong about everything, and then he turns around and the guy's standing right there, and he's like, yeah, he's actually right, you're totally messed up on everything that I meant, by the way.
No,
I don't even remember who the guy was, but
I could find it, but I don't.
That's a rom-com by any metric, and that I actually used to like, and that's a pretty good moment. I actually like rom-coms at The Holiday, though. Yeah, you got me there. I hate that one.
Mm-hmm.
What up?
Keanu Reeves. Oh, Always Be My Maybe. I forgot about Keanu Reeves, and I mean that's not.
Oh, that's a
yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, that's a stretch as a comedy because he exists for a long time in that, longer than Cameo really should be. But I'll give you that one because that really is. Here's the ringer. Here's the movie star. He's doing something crazy and fun. It doesn't ruin the movie. It enhances the movie. There's no one could argue otherwise. I think with a straight face, even me. That's a fun one. I like that.
Bill Murray in Zombieland. That's more Bill Murray just being a character. Jimmy Buffett in Jurassic World. Keith Richards in Pirates of the Caribbean. That's
not bad.
That's not bad since you know,
it's not great. Again, because the movie couldn't just do it. It had to slow everything down and make a big deal out of it, which ruins it essentially. Right. Yep. But the performance is good. The reason he's there has an outer and an inner reason. So the movie, at least when they were writing it, they found a reason for that guy to exist. That's fun. The only thing I don't like about it is they take that time to like almost circle around each other, and it's all this time and all this build up to it.
I forgot about that. Yeah,
it needs to just happen, you know, and it doesn't. It was just frustrating.
They're making it way too cute.
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. That's a
good one. It's a good one.
All right. Yeah. So there's some okay cameos out there. We're not totally anti-cameo.
No, not totally, but entirely anti-cameo. And 100% anti The Holiday, and about 72% anti Robert Altman.
Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Next up is a movie. I think this is one that.
Yeah, that we need to have the thing at the beginning where it's like Joel does not necessarily represent the views of the movie show. So you can get it out when I just make declarative statements about things. Yeah. But you know, if I'm going to be condescended to for 2.5 hours about celebrity in a movie full of celebrities, go F yourself. I mean, I'm sorry. And almost every one of his movies, at least from that era, go back into the 60s and 70s, and there's a much better variety. And the preachiness, while still really, really condescending and annoying, is about things that matter.
Yeah.
Pret-a-porter doesn't matter. Player doesn't matter. I'm sorry. I know that he had that career renaissance, and he did sort of find his way back to the light before he retired, but I hate.
I have no issue with what you're saying about
stuff.
I have no issue with what you're saying about Robert Altman.
But it's not fair to say it about like Nashville and Although MASH has a lot of the same problems, man. What a preachy, annoying, shitty, misogynist movie.
I just really like The Holiday. It's very lovely. Anyway,
it's The Holiday that we're gonna throw down.
Yeah, I depart with. Well, you've made it very clear.
I can't have a fair conversation with you about The Holiday until I rewatch The Holiday, and that, son, is never going to happen. So
that's what I mean. Is you've made it clear over the years of on the show that rom-coms and these sort of saccharine.
No, because while you were sleeping, I adore almost every second of. So I'm not some anti-rom-com curmudgeon. I don't like cloying crap like The Holiday. I just don't like it. I don't like it, and that's what I don't like. It's not rom-coms. I love rom-coms, man. I love all the Nora Ephron rom-coms to one degree or another. I like, you can pile up a whole ton of them, especially from that era. I don't like any Kate Hudson rom-coms. I'm sorry, but that's Kate Hudson's fault. That's not your fault, Joel.
So mostly maybe it's like the Nancy Meyers type.
I really don't like those because I don't get involved in them. You can smirk at them, but what else do they ask you to do? I mean, even in I don't know, pick some cheesy ones. I'm trying to think of the cheesy one.
It's complicated. Something's got to give. The Intern, The Holiday. Let's see.
So
she also has What Women Want, The Parent Trap, Father of the Bride, Baby. Then we go back. Baby Boom, Private Benjamin, Jumpin' Jack Flash.
I mean, I like some things about Baby Boom. I like the opening. I like Private Benjamin, and I like all basic training movies until they go out into the real world at the end, and then it completely falls apart. But Private Benjamin is not alone in that category. Full Metal Jacket has the same effing problem. So there you go. It's just a little sidetrack for us. No, I guess I don't like her, but I definitely like her much better back in the day.
Sure.
Because Baby Boom's pretty good. What was the other movie you said? Oh, Jumpin' Jack Flash. That's actually super underrated.
Jumpin' Jack Flash, the Father of the Bride, especially the very first Father of the Bride.
Hey, Father of the Bride, if it hadn't become a franchise, I would say yes. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, the very first Father of the Bride is really, really fun.
But it did become a franchise where every movie was demonstrably worse, and that did sort of suck the life out of the thing. But that first Father of the Bride's pretty great, actually.
All right.
You named another one in there that I don't necessarily hate too, but
must be The Parent Trap. You must love The Parent Trap.
Well, I love Parent Trap. Did she write the original Parent Trap?
No, this was the Lindsay Lohan version.
Well, Parent Trap is awesome, but if you're just adapting somebody's better movie to make but even the Lindsay Lohan Parent Trap's pretty great, actually.
Yeah, she did. Let's see, Marie Antoinette, Protocol, Once Upon a Crime, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Irreconcilable Differences, I Love Trouble. The Father of the Bride films, Baby Boom, Home Again, What Women Want, The Intern, The Holiday, Something's Got to Go.
I like about half of those, so it's not even a Nancy Meyers thing. It really is just The Holiday. I just hate the thing you love and want to kill it.
That's fair.
I'm sorry. I don't really care much about The Holiday. A Holiday's harmless enough. It's like I don't hate it. I just don't. There's just nothing for me in it. That's all.
All right. Well, next
it's not like those other movies like Valentine's Day where there's 8,000 cameos in it and it's all crap. It's not like that at all. It's a movie that has a foundation and a story. People that whether you can or not, you're supposed to give a shit about. That's all in The Holiday. So I'll look the other way.
All right. Next up was one that was an absolute joke that we when we were desperate to try to come up with show ideas. Best movie that starts with the letter X.
Problem with this is that we'd have the X-Files movies and the X-Men movies would all you'd be just talking about X-Men movies essentially.
Yeah.
Because what is the best movie that starts with the letter X, Joel? What do you think? I tried to pick one last night and I did, and I've already forgotten what it was.
I mean, there are many. There are surprisingly many. You could go with like Triple X, The Return of Xander Cage.
This is me typing. Sorry, everyone. My keyboard is very close to my microphone.
You could go with, like, my wife immediately said, well, it's got to be Xanadu. To which I said, I will not be choosing Xanadu.
No, Xanadu's better than the Return of Xander Cage.
Well, you have, so I do like X-Men, the original X-Men. I had a blast. Really, really fun movie. You have a movie that just came out last year, X. That is was a very popular horror movie.
Yeah, we talked about it. I liked X, but it's not going to be on top of any effing favorite list. Neither is the original X-Men either. Ugh.
You got Zingu, you got Extra. Let's see. Extracurricular. X-Cross. X Marks the Spot from 1942. You have the man with the X-ray, or no, it is X, the man with the X-ray.
It technically counts because it's X, the man with the X-ray eyes. Is the name of that movie. Yeah.
X-Men: Days of Future Past.
If you got to pick an X-Men movie, but I really feel like this category requires us to not do that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the best X-Men movie, and I would say X2, X-Men United, is really, really good too.
I would say X2 would be my choice of actually of any of the X-Men movies. X Marks the Spot from 1944, Excuse Me from 2003, which is a Hindi comedy film. Let's see. Extra credit. X Games the movie 3D, a documentary. X the Unknown. XXY, the Argentine Spanish.
So you can see why we didn't do this. I'm going to go with the soft X. I'm going to say my favorite on that list. My favorite is probably, I really liked the 98 X-Men movie. That was while the series was still on, and I really liked X-Men. I Want to Believe, the reunion movie. I didn't like the reunion TV show very much, but I really liked the reunion movie, which I really thought.
Oh, you mean X-Files? You said X-Men. Sorry.
Well, apologize. X-Files is what I mean. Yeah, sorry everybody. It's getting late in the show, and I'm confusing you now. All of my show energy was spent on hating on Robert Altman. So. X-Files, I mean, I like the X-Files movies a lot better than any of the X-Men movie. I like both of them better than any single X-Men movie, without a doubt. I actually think those are really good. I think that reunion movie, which wasn't liked by anybody, really, I think you need to look at what that really is, what they're going through, and how the plot very cleverly brings the debate up in a way that's not tired after all these years. And I really think Gillian Anderson's character and her struggle at the Catholic hospital she works at, like, I really think that's the stuff of decent film drama. I get that it's not super exciting like an X-Men movie, but that religion versus science, or the myth versus legend stuff that's going on in that story was what was at the heart of it. Even the psychic doesn't know why he's feeling the things that he is, and even the things he's wrong about, he's right about. So there's this great lesson in interpreting prophecy, and what it really bends over backwards to give you X-Files fans is a really twisted and weird murder mystery that's particularly gross when you find out what it's about. You guys love those standalone episodes, and it really is trying to be that for you. Whereas when it comes to the UFO, alien abduction, alien invasion mythology, that first movie's as good a chapter in that as exists. It's fantastic. It's got a huge ending that even the movie's bigger in scale as you'd expect for a movie to be. You've never seen anything like it before, a sense, in an X-Files film, and I really, really like that too. But Xanadu, man. That's so good. What's not to like about that?
I didn't like Xanadu. I don't.
It's not good, but it's really is one of those tacky, weird things that hit on enough things that it's a musical. Now it's a this. Now it's a that. The songs in it, while weird in context, out of context, almost all work. Like 9 of the 11 songs in that soundtrack are all great on their own. That helps.
I disagree. I did not like Xanadu.
Well, it makes Gene Kelly look like a fool. I never like when you pull somebody, you know, when it's got one foot in the grave back into Hollywood, and then you just basically embarrass them. So that's not cool.
Yeah.
But the animated sequence in it is adorable, and I mean, you know, it's an attempt at a modern movie musical in the most tacky music era of all time, the disco era. And It didn't do disco any favors, so you can't blame it for keeping disco around another couple of years. It was actually one of the final nails in the disco coffin.
That's true.
Which we all agree, I mean, love it or hate it, needed to be put in a coffin and put down at a certain point. So
yeah, there you go.
There's my favorite X movies. I tried to take that as seriously as I could.
Yeah, I don't think between the X-Files movie and X-Men or X2, X-Men United, I think there's your
it's got these weird Bryan Singer hymns. It's got animal cruelty in it. It's got all this weird shit where you're just like, why is that here? Why are you doing that again? What's the matter with you? Yep. Those two writers too that made Superman Returns, and that guy's out making his own movies now, which are all the same. They're all just like dick moves as movies, and I'm like, why are you a dick? Stop being a dick, and maybe you'll have something here.
Mm-hmm.
Although X2 in general is pretty good because from a comic book standpoint, it really does examine interesting stuff. There's a lot going on in that's cool, and the action is so much better than the original X-Men, which has just people running around in a gift shop at the end is supposed to be the big exciting ending. I don't know what the hell that's supposed to be. That's weak sauce.
Right.
The ending of X2 is big, man. People with superpowers holding back tidal waves and stuff, and that's what superhero movies are supposed to be.
Oh, couldn't agree more. Okay, so that is going to do it for us for this week. We did it, Ryan. We tackled the impossible.
And we didn't even have to do a B segment because I just went on and on and on.
We did. We will save Dr. Clock's Time Glorious. Doctor, what is it? Dr. Clock's Time Glorious Mind Scrabula. We will save that for another episode.
Nice.
All right, everybody. You can reach out to us on the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan Facebook page and email us at askjoelandryan@gmail.com. Look for us on all the other socials. And we will see you next week with will we see them next week?
It's still up in the air, but we might not see you next week.
We might not see you next week. We're just scheduling stuff. Ryan and I are very popular. We're very super popular people. Just pulled in all sorts of directions. People,
not me. He's speaking only of himself when he says that. But thank you for including me in that little circle of love. I appreciate it. Alan Cummings' Nightcrawler in X2 is really good too. That's fun realization.
Underrated. I mean, I think there were a lot of people that didn't like it for some reason.
It's got its good and bad things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, everybody, that is going to do it. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.